Hi everyone and welcome back to FreakSense TV. I am your host Charlie Freak, and today is another video where you won't see me. And just to give you a little reason why, anytime there is a video where you don't see me, it's because I have recently finished with the chores and I look like the vagabond that I truly am. So it's better for you, me, and everyone that my face remain anonymous for this video. And the video today is entitled Charlie Freak Rants about a George Carlin rant. And the video that we're going to watch together here in just a minute is commonly known as They Don't Give a Fuck About You at All, from his brilliant 2005 HBO special, Life is Worth Losing. And what we're going to focus on today are a couple of components about George himself. Now, virtually all of you who are listening to this have watched this segment of George's video at least once, probably many times in your life, and are quite familiar with the powerful and truthful words that George Carlin spoke in the video. But what I want to focus on today are two specific aspects about George Carlin. One, what I'd like you to do as we go through and watch this phenomenal segment is listen to how cleverly Carlin talks to this audience, talks to the people who are going to watch this, perhaps purchase his DVD from this HBO special, and are going to come into contact with it. Because while many of these people know that things are screwed up in society, most of them are still so completely inured within society that they're bound to it. And so the incredible thing about Carlin in this video is that he is leveling society down to no clothing. This is the emperor without clothes. And he's showing the heart and soul of how the system operates, why it operates the way it does, and then comments on ultimately the biggest aspect of all, which is that we don't do anything about it. We don't do anything about the fact that the emperor has no clothes and the game is rigged. The table is tilted and nothing works in our favor. And incredibly, everything works in favor of the few. And you need to think about this. Ultimately, there are 300 families, a committee of 300 families that are behind everything because they print the money. They're the ones that create money into existence, whether on a computer or via a printing press. They are the ones that control what we hold as actual money when it's nothing more than monopoly money. And so this tiny group of people have everything amongst every single nation, all of these different types of precious, beautiful, incredible human beings. Everything goes in their favor, everything. And none of us seem to warm up to the fact that this is a statistical anomaly, an impossibility, that virtually everything should work in the favor of the majority because, well, we are the majority. And if this is a democracy, then anyone who represents the democracy should create things like laws in existence that benefit the many and not the few, and yet go through virtually every ruling the court system in the United States has made, or governmental system, and you'll see that everything works in the favor of the few and hampers the many. And this hasn't gone on for 1 or 2 years. This is hundreds and hundreds of years that this has gone on, and no one does anything about it, even though the Constitution itself says that you not only have the right to rebel against enemies, both foreign and domestic, you have an obligation to do so. We have an obligation to do something about the fact that these rich cocksuckers constantly are sucking the cock of 300 families and aren't doing anything for everyone else. And we let them get away with it. So listen, this time when you're going through and watching this incredible segment, listen to how Carlin just lays everything so completely bare, and yet does so in such a way that all of these people in the audience and all of the people who are watching on an HBO or who ultimately even purchase a copy of the HBO special will add it to their collection, will watch it from time to time, and will be able to neatly tuck it in within their cognitive dissonance and allow it to stay there, because Carlin has this brilliant gift of which he can lay the system to bear without getting everyone's backs up because he's just another crazed conspiracy theorist. And of course, the technique he uses is comedy. The technique that Carlin uses is the magic of his words, and he was a master linguist, a master smith of words. He truly was. So that's one aspect that I want you to focus on. And the second thing is I want you to really watch Carlin as you're listening to this 3-minute clip, and observe everything about his face, his eyes, his hands, his body in general. And notice how this isn't an entertainer up on the stage creating some material that entertains people so that he becomes famous and receives a decent paycheck for his services. George Carlin isn't saying these things because it'll sell a DVD. George Carlin is saying these things because they're his truth, because he believes that this is the truth, and that George Carlin is a representative, a messenger of the truth. And the truth is this earth, and the truth is God. So whether he believed in Mother Earth or God or not, Carlin truly was a pristine, beautiful representation of God and Mother Earth, because he unleashed truth. And every single thing about his nonverbal language tells us that he believed these words with every cell in his body. Every ounce of his soul were in these words. And that's what I want you to focus on today. So let's take a look at this amazing clip by George Carlin entitled, "They Don't Give a Fuck About You at All."
There's a reason for this. There's a reason education sucks, and it's the same reason that it will never, ever, ever be fixed. It's never going to get any better. Don't look for it. Be happy with what you got. Because the owners of this country don't want that. I'm talking about the real owners now. The real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. They spend billions of dollars every year lobbying to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interest. That's right. They don't want people who are smart enough to sit around the kitchen table and figure out how badly they're getting fucked by a system that threw them overboard 30 fucking years ago. They don't want that. You know what they want? They want obedient workers. Obedient workers. People who are just smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork, and just dumb enough to passively accept all these increasingly shittier jobs with the lower pay, the longer hours, the reduced benefits, the end of overtime, and the vanishing pension that disappears the minute you go to collect it. And now they're coming for your Social Security money. They want your fucking retirement money. They want it back, so they can give it to their criminal friends on Wall Street. And you know something? They'll get it. They'll get it all from you sooner or later, because they own this fucking place. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club. By the way, it's the same big club they used to beat you over the head with all day long when they tell you what to believe. All day long, beating you over the head in their media, telling you what to believe, what to think, and what to buy. The table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged. And nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. Good, honest, hard-working people, white collar, blue collar, doesn't matter what color shirt you have on. Good, honest, hard-working people continue. These are people of modest means. Continue to elect these rich cocksuckers who don't give a fuck about them. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't care about you at all, at all, at all. Yeah, you know? And nobody seems to notice, nobody seems to care. That's what the owners count on, the fact that Americans will probably remain willfully ignorant of the big red, white, and blue dick that's being jammed up their assholes every day. Because the owners of this country know the truth. It's called the American dream, because you have to be asleep to believe it.
The American dream, because you have to be asleep to believe it. That is just so brilliant. And again, I really wanted to have you take a look at this clip another time, this time with your eyes wide open, and really understand something that's very important, that within the mainstream entertainment industry, within any industry that was forced to go through the mainstream, and that includes all variations of artists, there were those souls who truly cared and who truly did their best to encode as much truth as they possibly could and stay alive. And I just want to bring up a book that was written a number of years ago, and it's got a lot of traction within the alternative media and the truth movement. And that book is Dave McGowan's Weird Scenes Inside Laurel Canyon. And while McGowan, and I just want to really point this out so that you understand, McGowan was a mainstream author. He was not some kind of alternative or conspiracy theorist-minded author. He was a mainstream author, and he came across some information and he ran with it. And there are many aspects to McGowan's book that are extremely valid and important. But here's the key thing to remember with Dave McGowan's book, because it has really been the forefront of a whole slew of other books that have come afterwards that have essentially done the same thing that McGowan has done. And that is attempt to paint the Sistine Chapel with a roller. And you can't do it. You cannot create all of the fine detail behind these artists by simply throwing them under the bus. The fact of the matter is that every single artist that sold their product via the mainstream had to conform to a degree to the rules of mainstream industry, because that's the only game in town. And so every single artist was under duress in one form or another to be able to go along with society. And yeah, Carlin did the same thing. George Carlin spoke an enormous amount of truth as he progressed as an artist. He started out very much just wanting to be a star, being able to be a star, doing what he loved, which was comedy. And so to get along, he went along. And George Carlin got to a certain point where he realized that he had lost his roots a la Lenny Bruce. You know, remember in that very famous performance in LA when Lenny Bruce was arrested, taken off stage and arrested, George Carlin was actually present in the audience and was also arrested that night. And there's actually a picture that you can locate on the internet of Carlin and his mugshot from the concert that night. And those are the roots of George Carlin, somebody who cared deeply about humanity. And Carlin spent the rest of his career getting back to his roots, which were Lenny Bruce, and telling as much truth as he possibly could about how organized society was getting away with everything that they were doing, what they were up to, what the agendas were, and who ultimately was behind it. And Carlin pushed the boundaries of censorship within the entertainment industry as far as he could and got an enormous amount of material out, as did so many other artists, including rock musicians from the late 60s and the so-called hippie movement. Again, you have certain people that come along with agendas, they give a little bit of truth, and then boom, they destroy black and white destruction of entire movements. And that never is the case. Nothing is this or that. Everything is shades of gray. Everything is this and that. So again, the great benefit to Dave McGowan's book is the understanding that the CIA has worked deeply with the entertainment industry and artists to be able to help shape and control all of these various forms of art. Now, the reason that they've had to do that is because the vast majority of artists are not only brilliant, genius in creating these perfect creations that represent God's truth, and they won't compromise, and they're not compromising. So they have to insert these double agents within the system and then push their narrative, the narrative that is taking away from the pristine beauty of authentic creation and giving you Jackson Pollock and empty canvases or splatters of paint on a canvas instead, and telling you that's art while suppressing everything else. Or in the 1970s with rock and roll, killing the brilliance of all of this incredible album art, just these genius album creations by artist after artist, really right up until 1982, and then with like a vice grip clamping down, buying off all of the radio stations, controlling what's getting played, and then destroying analog-based studios and forcing everyone into CD and into digital, and taking away the rich, fat sounds of analog and giving you the cold, tinny sounds of all digital, and then giving you electronic music and telling you that that's just the new trend. It isn't the new trend. It is suppression of true art. And this is something that Carlin had to fight through his entire life, and he did. And it's what rock and roll artists had to do as well. So don't let someone come along and encourage you to throw the baby out with the bathwater just because they wrote a book about the 1960s telling you how deeply entrenched the CIA was with art and artists. It is a game that they control. And as Carlin said, the table is tilted, the game is rigged. And nobody seems to notice, nobody seems to care. And then someone comes along and tries to say that everyone within the movement is complicit, and you buy it, and they're not. So we have to always keep an open mind, and we have to be able to always remember this and that, not black or white. When you hear black and white from anyone in the truth movement, they're lying to you. Whether they mean to or not, it doesn't matter. They're lying to you. Nothing is black or white. And black or white is fear. And that's fear porn. And that's what so many within the truth community are doing. And if you look at who is the most famous with the greatest number of followers and subscribers on their YouTube channels and everything else, and the ones that incredibly are the ones speaking on behalf of Flat Earth or speaking on behalf of the truth community with regards to everything else, it's always the ones who push fear porn. They're never telling you a holistic understanding of anything. They're only telling you that the end game is coming. Good God, the end game is here. That's what George Carlin was trying to tell you. And brilliantly did so without coming off as some conspiracy kook. The reality is, the end game is here when we live in a virtual prison and the vast majority think that they're free. Wow, that there's no better way to explain our current reality. The vast majority think they're free and spend the rest of their day complaining about how they're not free and can't piece the two things together. And that's what Carlin did in this clip. And that's what George Carlin shifted his career away from center of the road in the mainstream to pushing as much truth as he could. And don't kid yourself. Carlin knew that there's a committee of 300 families. He understood what these agendas were going on behind the pseudo-democratically elected governments of the world. You can't say those things directly or you don't get published on HBO. It's that simple. So again, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. What we need to do, and what I'm going to continue to do, is bring you examples like Carlin, like Bill Hicks, like Steve Hughes, like Lenny Bruce, and all throughout the rock and roll industry as well. Artists that didn't sell out, artists that maintained their integrity and pushed their messages, God's messages, as far as they could and still get published. And that's the reality, folks. It's this and that because the powers that be create an economic-based system that they rule over. And so you have to create allegories with your art, with your messages, to be able to get them published in this sick, fucking upside-down reality. So please, embrace the likes of George Carlin. Know that he did as much for humanity as he could. And let's celebrate those aspects and not throw everybody under the bus because the CIA was active with artists and the artistic industry. So thank you very, very much for listening to my rant on top of George Carlin's rant. And I hope you enjoyed this video, again, all brought to you in HD, the wonders of HD. And I'll be back with another video very, very shortly. And maybe I'll clean up my hair, get the bugs out, and shave. And maybe you'll be able to see me next time. We'll see. So thank you very much. Colleen and I appreciate all your support. And we will see you and talk to you very soon. Good night.